Hey legends, welcome back to our buy, hold and sell for round 7. And as you can see up on top there, our cash cow makes a return because we have a smorgasbord of cheapies this week. We've also got a few superstars looking to make their return and a few guys where it's just unfortunately time to move on. So with all of that in mind, let's get into it. Okay, I'm not going to dwell too much on Angus Crichton, but he has to be one of the buys of the week. He definitely was that last week or maybe even the week before. But with 2 scores now of 59 and 61, I reckon Angus Crichton is an absolute near-on must-have. Let's keep moving. Next up, Kalyn Ponga. So similar story to Angus Crichton. Ponga was a little bit of a cheapie or cheapie gun anyway last week and maybe the week before. He's coming off scores of 72, 67 and 69. And based on the teams that he's up against over the next few weeks, he could go on an absolute rampage. So for me, I reckon this is probably the last week to jump on Kalyn Ponga. He's a superstar and there's no doubt he could go nuts. Let's keep moving. Shawn Blore. So we got a couple of question marks on Shawn Blore. So obviously 564k with a 19 break even and a 0.71 ppm. He's coming off a massive 70 last week, and this week we've got Joey Chan returning to the bench. So this is one that, look, I'm not going to talk you out of buying him. He's got massive potential, especially alongside Munster, but I'm really keen to see the way Bellamy utilizes Chan and Blore on the field at the same time. Who does it impact when he brings Joey Chan back into the squad? So I think with that in mind, if you're going to buy Shawn Blore this week, just be cautious that Joey Chan could have a little bit of an impact on Blore's minutes. I think that is a little bit of a wait and see, but I certainly think you could do a lot worse than Shawn Blore. He's going really well. Let's keep moving. Okay, so here's one for my friends across the Dutch. A lot of people asked me last week, where's CNK? Why haven't you included CNK in the buy list? And I've got him here now, but I really want to talk to him because there is some question marks for me. And I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking in the comment section down below on CNK here. So first up, look, the stats, 630k, 19 break even, a 0.52 ppm, and owned by just under 10% of fantasy players. And he's coming off a massive 65 and 69 in his first 2 games back. Now, one of the reasons that I didn't include him last week and a little bit hesitant to include him this week is his history. So in 2023, he only averaged a 40.1. He was prone to a couple of games where he scored some really decent points. And then if we go way back to 2022, his average is looking at like 26.3. So CNK is definitely one that I'm really happy to be wrong on. But for me, I still think there is a relatively high degree of caution here. I think if you jump on, you're probably going to make some money. There's no doubt about that. But I do wonder how long he can continue this run of form for. And if you've jumped on, kudos to you. Well played. I think you're pretty happy with those 65s and 69s. And I absolutely hope it continue. In fact, it needs to continue if the Warriors are really going to make a run for the finals in 2024. They're one of the teams that I absolutely think can win it. And I think to do so, they need a CNK playing at his absolute best. And right now he's doing exactly that. Let's keep moving. Okay, so this next section is all about cash cow. So we've got our cash cow here. Let's just jump into some of these guys. Now, there's always a big asterisk over any cash cow, and that's 1, how many minutes are they going to play? 2, how long are they going to be in the side for? And 3, when should you look to move them on? So we're going to talk about some of those things as we go through this list. And first up, an incredibly popular player, Xavier Willison, a player who we were really keen on just prior to round 1, but unfortunately he didn't get selected. He's now in the team, and the big question mark on Xavier Willison is how long is he going to stay there? Fingers crossed it's for the remainder of the season. He looks absolutely amazing. Available in mid, 366k with a -2 break even and a ridiculous 1.05 ppm. So he's kind of, a similar vein to Payne Haas, Terrell May. Just an absolute workhorse when he is on the park. So currently owned by 35.11% of fantasy players. And so far he's pumped out 35, 32 and 56. But like I said, the big question for me is, when is Payne Haas back? Rumour is it's round 8. And will Xavier Willison line up in the squad when Big Payne Haas is back? So that's my question. I was tempted this week, but I'm probably going to wait a week, and then I think it's probably a week too late to jump on board the Willison Express. So if you're up for a bit of a punt and you think Willison is going to be in the team for the remainder of the season, he'll certainly get a few more games over the State of Origin period, then he might be a bit of a goer for you. So the big question mark is obviously minutes and longevity. So let's keep moving. Okay, one that's just popped up is Brent Naden at the Tigers there. So 330k, centre wing fullback dual, a 24 break even, and a 0.32 ppm, owned by next to no one, so potentially a pod if he can get some consistent scores. And the big sort of asterisks that we would put beside a Brent Naden are the fact that in 2023 he has 2 0 scores in 80-minute games. So that's a big sort of concern there. But he's also got a 50 and a 61 in that same season. So he's really all over the place. But you would have to say 2024 West Tigers are a very different team to 2023 West Tigers. So if you have confidence in that team and their ability to deliver more points this year, then Brent Naden might not be a silly option. Okay, Kale Iro, we spoke about him last week. He just seems to go from strength to strength and is looking like he's going to hold down that centre spot at the Sharkies. Currently 318k with a -2 break even and a 0.57 ppm. Owned by nearly 40% of fantasy players now, so absolutely huge. And he's coming off a 49 and a 40 over his last 2 games. The big question marks remain longevity and Talakai. The good news here is Talakai is still in the team, but just playing off the bench in more of a forward kind of role. The thing with the Sharkies, though, they get more and more of their forwards back in the next coming weeks. And I do wonder, will that put any additional pressure on Kale Iro to retain his spot? So one to watch for sure. Let's keep moving. Chevy Stewart, I won't dwell too much here, but 239k and an 11 break even with a 0.29 ppm. His scores last week weren't huge. I think they were in the early 20s or something like that. But the good news for Chevy is it looks like he's going to retain his spot for up to about 5 more weeks. So you will make some cash over that period of time. Let's keep moving. Okay, a player who I'm a little bit excited about actually, Trey Fuller at the Dolphins. There's no statistics. He's not actually loaded into the system just yet, but he does have a 53-point game in 47 minutes in 2023. So I'm not expecting him to come in at 230k, but I certainly don't hope that they price him up around the 53-point mark, because that'd make him instantly out of reach. He's definitely one to keep an eye on. If he comes out and delivers an amazing result at a really cheap price for the Dolphins, then that position could be his for as long as Hammer is out. So that's definitely one to watch. And if he comes in and delivers those 53 plus point scores per game over the next 4 or 5 games, then he could absolutely skyrocket in terms of his price. So one to watch for sure. Jai Gray had a really decent debut. I think he was probably one of the better cheapies from last week. Up to 254k already with a 4 break even and a 0.57 ppm. The same sort of question marks remain, but he is starting to firm up as someone who's a little bit more secure in his position. There's talk about pushing Latrell Mitchell into the centres and keeping Jai Gray at fullback. So if you take the punt early and that actually comes to fruition, then that could be one of the plays of the year. Now, it is worth noting that Jai Gray and the entire Bunnies team are out this week on the bye, so you don't have to rush him in this week, but definitely worth consideration for next week. Let's keep moving. Alrighty, so our last guy on the bye list is Tom Chester, so wing fullback centre. 377k with a 12 break even and a 0.51 ppm. Currently owned by less than 3% of fantasy players, so potentially a decent pod, and he's coming off scores of 34 and 44. Now, a couple of points to note on Tom Chester. When he's playing greater than 80 minutes, he does have an average of 40.8, and you can see that reflected in the score that he got last week. And if he achieves that average, then we're looking at about 13 points of value, and that'll push his price somewhere around the early to mid 500s. Now, I think the other thing to note about the Cowboys in general is that they do play the first major bye round, so he's a decent chance to pick him up, possibly as a downgrade option for somebody who is likely to play 80 minutes for potentially the rest of the season, so keep that one in mind. Okay, on to the holds, and look, Blaze Talangi could either be a hold or a sell depending on the situation that you are in. He is back this week, but coming off the bench, and that could have a little bit of a negative sort of result on his break-even and his points. If Brad Arthurs only brings him in for 5 or 10 minutes, then he may only score, 4 or 5 points, and if that happens, he could actually lose money. So it's a little bit of a risk, but I reckon he's pretty cheap. If you've held him this long, you might as well hold him for another week. At least you get a green dot. I wouldn't be playing him in your 17, but you never know. You could get lucky here and he could come on and play for 70 plus minutes if there is an injury or something like that. So just keep that one in mind. Joey Chan, so a similar scenario to Blaze Talangi. He's back in the Melbourne Storm squad as well, coming in as the 17th man. The big question mark here for Joey is what sort of impact is he going to have given that Blore is performing so well, and whose minutes does he take? Does he take them from Blore or does he take them from someone else in the team? So that's a big question mark. Be very interested to see how they utilize Joey Chan. Do they utilize him as a mid or do they do a little bit of edge rotation? So something to consider. But similar to Blaze, if you've held on to him for this long, you might as well just hold on to him for one more week and see exactly what the Storm are going to do. Kuli Kefu, Fini Fuiaki, 391k with a 23 break even. He will continue to make us a little bit of money. He's currently got a 0.59 ppm and is owned by just under 20% of fantasy players. So he's coming off scores of 38, 40, 26, 29, and 33. Personally, I think that's a little bit underwhelming. And I would have loved to have seen Fini Fuiaki pushing somewhere around the 50 mark. It just hasn't sort of translated into fantasy points, which is a real shame. He just doesn't seem to be getting involved enough, especially not from an attacking point of view, and that's really disappointing. But he does have probably another 1 or 2 weeks of value left in him, and then you should probably look to move him on. But just hold for now. I think like most people, we've probably got issues elsewhere and with some other players. Let's keep moving. Okay, Dane Mariner. Now, this one is very interesting. So he's coming off that fractured back that he picked up, I think, 2 rounds ago. And unbelievably, he's actually a small chance to play this week. And if he doesn't make this week, then he's a strong chance to actually play in round 8. Now, he's owned by a pretty decent chunk of fantasy players, up above 10%. So if you're thinking about selling him, I think, just wait for that sort of last minute team update news. Because you never know, you might just see Dane Mariner take the park this weekend. Now, another Bronco, we haven't really heard a lot of information about Brendan Piakura, but there was some news out this week that on radio up here in Queensland that apparently Kevin Walters confirmed that Piakura, Reynolds and Haas would all likely return in round 8. So that's some good news if you've held Piakura for this long. Hopefully not too long to go, and then we get Piakura back into our squads. I think an 80-minute edge back rower at 361k is huge, especially if he can pump out scores of 40 plus. That would be absolutely sensational. Let's keep moving. On to the sells now, and if you haven't done it already, Burbo, 362k with a 26 break even. He's scoring pretty decently, and if you can hold, he'll probably make you a tiny bit more money. But he is out with a torn hamstring. I think he's out for up to 4 weeks. That's a little bit painful. He is near his peak in terms of price rises. He may sneak up to around the 400k mark if you can wait around for that long, but I think there's some better options to sell him into that'll make you money a little bit quicker. Let's keep moving. Jaden Campbell. Now this one really hurts because he was on our buy list last week. But unfortunately, he's gone and got himself injured and it's looking like he's out for 4 weeks. Unfortunately, that means he's a sell and you have to move on. Drew Hutchison, I think he's really started to peak. He got that 19 last week, which unfortunately means he lost money. And I think the odds of him breaking that 39 break even are pretty slim. So for me, given that he's got Newcastle this week and the bye the week after, you've really got to start to look to move on from Drew Hutchison. For me, he's a sell this week. I can understand people holding this week and selling next week. but I reckon he's peaked and it's time to move on. Now, Tanner Boyd, he has been dropped for the second week in a row. What we loved about Tanner Boyd is the flexibility between hooker and half, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like he's going to make his way back into this team anytime soon, and I think it's time to move on. Tui Kemikamika, unfortunately picked up a little bit of a calf injury. You can see in that last game he only scored a 1. It looks like he's out for 4 weeks, and like some of these other guys with injuries, it's time to move on. And the last player on our list is Blake Taff at 373k and a 26 break even. There's a couple of things obviously to note with Taff. So one, he's been moved to the bench for the doggy, so he is back, but unfortunately he doesn't come straight back into the team. And even if he did, I reckon he's not far from peaking in terms of his price point anyway. Given that they've got the bye next week, I think it's pretty much time to move on from Blake Taff. So there you go, guys. Look, another huge buy, hold, and sell. Let me know if I've missed anyone. You know, there's some players in there like Bronson Cherry. Ruben Garrick is coming up on the radar pretty soon. What do we do with players like Cam McInnes? Britton Nakora's price looks pretty decent as well. So there's a lot to consider going into this week and next week. Good luck with your teams this week. Good luck with your scoring. I'll be back over the next day or two with a team update for me. I think I'm going to target someone like Angus Crichton this week. I'm really keen to get in a Kai Pearce-Paul. And I think another player who I should have had on the buy list maybe is Corey Waddell. I think he definitely offers us some potential value that we probably need to talk about as well. But anyway, guys, there you go. Look, if you've liked today's video, you know what to do. Smash that like button for me. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, guys, get involved in the conversation via the comment section down below. And I'll see you all in the next video.